Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. And today we're going to be talking about the idea of, is prepping pointless? Considering everything that's going on in the world today, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed, like you can't possibly be prepared for anything, so what's the point? And I think if you've watched my channel for any length of time, that I would hope that when you saw the title of the video, you were like, he's probably going to tell us why it's not pointless. And if you did, you would be correct. So first of all, prepping, it isn't just about the big stuff. Everybody thinks of prepping as like just end of days kind of stuff, or only preparing for a complete societal collapse and stuff like that. But in reality, a lot of the events that we would be using our preps for, they're probably going to be small scale stuff. Now, I know that with everything going on in the world right now, there are some large scale things going down that, I mean, they could get worse and they could turn into an even bigger large scale situation. So I completely get that. And what I think we should do is prepare in such a way that we are set up as good as possible for the small scale stuff that's most likely to happen to us in our area. And that's different for different folks. If you live in a coastal area, of course, one of your big threats that you should be preparing for is things like hurricanes. But if you live somewhere in Kansas, hurricane preparation doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You would probably be preparing for something completely different. But prepare for those things that are very likely to happen to you in such a way that it allows you to be prepared for larger scale events as well. Because a lot of the preps that we can do, they're applicable to many different things. So take a Kelly kettle, for instance. We'll be looking at one of those coming up soon on the channel. It's going to be good in any sort of grid down situation, provided you have some sort of biomass, like natural material, that you can burn in. It doesn't matter if your power's knocked out for a few days and you need to cook, or if the power's out for like years or months. That is a prep that is going to be able to help you long term. And there's others too. That was just the first thing that came to mind because I know I'm going to be looking at one on the channel soon. But I mean, like I said, natural disasters, they happen all the time. They seem to be happening more frequently. You can argue for or against that. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, there's all the time small scale stuff happening. And then one people don't really think about a lot is personal financial disasters. That's probably more likely to happen to somebody than any of the others, like job loss or just something like that. So big reason why prepping isn't pointless is because there's small scale stuff that happen to people pretty much every day, and preparing and prepping helps you get ready for those. Another reason that prepping isn't pointless is that our system is incredibly fragile. And the past couple years have proved that. We've had numerous supply chain issues that have been caused by various different things, but reliance on technology and having global commerce, while they allow us to do things that in decades past we could have barely even dreamed of, it has introduced multiple failure points that could cause severe issues with the system or cause the whole thing to come tumbling down. Things like natural disasters, the pandemic that we dealt with, war, strikes, or any other like man-made circumstance could cause those different points of failure to actually fail, and we have seen that a lot the past couple years. But one big reason why prepping isn't pointless, kind of changing gears, is that it gives you peace of mind. It allows you to go into a situation with confidence rather than panic, which is a very big deal, because if you go into something not knowing what to do, freaking out, you're going to make mistakes. That is going to make the overall situation much, much worse. But when you have some things set aside, you have a plan in mind of how you're going to handle different things, then you're going to be a lot better off. You will have already decided what you're going to do in certain circumstances when you can think clearly and when you're not under the gun, so to speak. But if you don't have those preparations and something does happen, you don't know what you're going to do, then you are trying to make big decisions when you are at least somewhat mentally compromised, and you don't want that at all. And another good thing about prepping is that it allows you to be generous. Since you have already set aside things, it puts you in a position where if you want to, then you can help out family, friends, neighbors, whatever the case may be. It can be big, can be small. You can do it, you can't do it, whatever the case. And I'm not really here to argue whether it's a good idea or not to do that, but it puts you in a position where you can do those things if you want to. And at the very least, it's going to allow you to not be a drain on resources. If there is some sort of situation that goes down, you don't have to be one of those people going and panic buying at the local grocery store trying to get everything, because that is what further exasperates a problem and puts further strain on the system, is people buying way more in mass than what they would normally do. You don't have to contribute to that because you already got what you need if you're prepared. But also, if there is relief being handed out, like different organizations or whatever the case may be comes in with like bottled water and food, you can, by being prepared and being able to stay home and eat off of that stuff, you can save that for the people that really need it. So, I mean, I think being prepared benefits not only you and your loved ones, but it also, it helps out everybody in large, because there will be more to go around since you won't need to be taking advantage of those resources. And, I mean, you're probably going to use your preps anyway for things like canned goods, food storage that can be rotated. I mean, you should be storing what you eat anyway. The only thing is you have them, you have some extra. So you're going to be eating your rotated food storage anyway. And then also for more long-term food storage, things like freeze-dried meals, even though, yeah, you want to set those things aside and not use them a whole lot, it's perfectly fine that every once in a while you take a few pouches. Maybe you're going on a hiking trip, camping trip, hunting trip, whatever the case may be. And I mean, really, that's a great way to figure out what your family likes anyway. And people's tastes change over time. So by eating on those things every once in a while when you're going on different sorts of like recreational trips or whatever, that's actually beneficial because it helps you know if everybody still likes that. And if they don't, then you can change directions with what you're storing. And I mean, it's a hedge against inflation. It might kind of be a little bit too late to enjoy that. But when you store things like, toilet paper doesn't really expire. I mean, if you store it wrong, it's not going to be as useful. But, for the most part, you can store toilet paper for a few years without any problem. That's another thing that you would rotate through. And of course, that's just an example. There's other things. But if you buy things when prices are cheaper, and then they get more expensive, then you come out on top. And y'all, there's no guarantee that stuff isn't going to continue to get more and more expensive. Just because it's expensive now doesn't mean it might not be more expensive in October. So continue to do those good prepper things of setting things aside. Maybe you might have to slow down a little bit just because of funds that you have. That's understandable. But don't stop just because stuff is more expensive, because there's no guarantee that it's going to go down anytime soon. And then also gear, not like food and water and consumables and stuff like that, but things like multi-tools, knives, guns, things like that. They can be used for recreation. They shouldn't just be sitting in a safe or in a lockbox somewhere and you never ever use them. You should be getting out and learning how to use those different things, so when you actually are in a situation where you need to get them, you're not like pulling something out and be like, so this is a knife. You don't want to be in that position. And then also some things can be used daily. Like my wife and I, we have a Berkey, and we used it especially when we had our baby and he was on formula. He was adopted, so breastfeeding wasn't really an option. And we wanted to put the best water possible in his formula mix, so we ran it through the Berkey, because our local tap is like chemical swamp water. So you might have preps that you can use every single day, and you get your money's worth out of that. And then also, another reason why prepping is not pointless is there is historical precedent for things happening that affect people's lives in negative ways. I mean, history is full of events that, quote unquote, came out of nowhere and took people off guard. Although, if you're a student of history, you know that a lot of those things that came out of nowhere had plenty of, I guess, signs or signals that they were about to happen. There was a clear progression of events that led to them. And then there's other things that were slowly built up to, even though it was a really long time ago, and this is an extreme example. The Roman Empire was an example of that. There were a bunch of eroding factors that happened over a very long period of time that just resulted in everything just falling apart. And leading into that, global powers have been rising and declining for thousands upon thousands of years. It's incredibly arrogant to think that our modern day powerful countries, whatever they are, I'm not going to call anybody out individually, but it's arrogant to think that that can't happen again. I mean, it probably is if we're around long enough, and I guess we can kind of debate whether or not that's going to happen. But as long as people are on Earth, civilizations are going to go up, they're going to go down, and that's just going to continue. It's going to be a constant cycle. And then drought, famine, and war, they can bring even thriving areas to their knees. It doesn't take a whole lot of, just bad circumstances to really change things. I mean, you look at the economy before the Rona ruined everybody's lives. I mean, the economy was doing really well, and then within just a very short period of time, that all went screeching to a halt. So, I mean, and given there was some warning that that was going to spread to other areas. But point is, history is full of these different kinds of events that if people were prepared, they would have been better off dealing with those events. And then government, they're limited in what they can do, and in some cases, what they're willing to do. I did a video a while back that was, your government cannot save you. And it was full of different examples of how bureaucracy and continuity of government, they can either get in the way or they don't really even factor in the well-being of just normal everyday citizens like you and I. So since the government is limited by funds, resources, and bureaucracy, and their plans for the worst case scenarios really only cover how government's going to continue, it's wise to be able to take care of yourself. And really, another reason why prepping isn't pointless is that you are doing it anyway. So I guess this could be beneficial for maybe if you have some friends or relatives, whatever the case may be, that they're kind of on the fence about prepping, or they maybe they kind of pick at you over whatever. But if you have something like insurance, if you have things like smoke alarms, you already have things in place that will help you if things go bad. The only difference with preppers is we tend to have a more long-term focus on it, and we tend to go a little bit further than just having smoke alarms and car insurance and things like that. So, I mean, everybody is a prepper to some degree. Well, y'all might, that's probably not a good way to say that. Everybody is preparing for worst case scenarios. That's a better way to say that. It's just a matter of how far do you go with it. And I mean, this whole idea of only depend on the supply chain, only depend on the government, blah, 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 I'm not sure if people have really been thinking that way for very long. I think that's something that's really only materialized in the past several decades, where we didn't really have to do that much for ourselves. We could depend, or rather, there weren't things in place that people could depend on. So, and I'm not trying to rag on anybody, but, you know, different social programs and stuff like that. There weren't wide-scale social programs until probably the, you know, sometime after 1900. I don't know the exact day, so don't tear me apart on that. But people used to be far more independent than what they are today. But anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope this was a good refresher of why we do the things that we do as preppers. And if you're somebody on the fence that maybe was wondering if this whole prepping thing is kind of crazy and stuff like that, hopefully you see it as a little bit less crazy. So y'all have a good one. Thanks for stopping by.